The Clarity Act, the U.S. Digital Asset Market Clarity Act that's been making noise in this community for weeks, is supposedly facing a Senate deadline this week, with most of the chatter landing on today or tomorrow as the day it passes. That's the freshest specific claim we've got, and it's Tuesday, August 4th. I'm Truman Vale, this is Sentinel's RV/GCR Daily Brief. We've got the Clarity Act timeline, the August 6th Redemption Center target that's now 48 hours out, and a correction I need to make about something I got wrong yesterday. So let's get right into it. All right, before we go any further, I need to own a mistake. Yesterday I said there was no verified evidence that redemption centers exist and asked whether they were a real thing that actually existed. That was wrong and it was my mistake. In this community, a redemption center is not some separate secret facility, it just means a bank that will be handling the currency exchange. Some banks are expected to convert dinar, dong, and zim, some aren't. The ones that will are what people mean by redemption centers. There was never any question about whether banks exist. I framed the community's own everyday shorthand as if it were an unproven claim, and that's on me. Now what is still unverified is which banks, whether any specific bank has actually been designated or notified, when appointments or 800 numbers would really begin, and what rates would be involved, plus the whole QFS quantum access location layer some claims attached to the term. Those are still claims, the word itself isn't, so my apologies for muddying that yesterday. Let's move on and get today's news right. Yesterday we were watching that early trade bank opening in Baghdad, 7 a.m. doors, staff already running compliance by the time customers arrived. That was real. Today the talk has shifted hard toward the Clarity Act, with multiple voices saying it needs to pass by tomorrow, Wednesday, to keep things on schedule. The chatter is the Act's passage is a prerequisite, that key people are waiting on it before they can move forward with dispersing. One voice gave it better than even odds for today, Tuesday. Another said the Senate deadline is Thursday, August 7th. So we've got a tight window and conflicting timelines, which is pretty standard, but the urgency around this particular piece of legislation is new and worth tracking. Here's what the Clarity Act supposedly does, according to the voices pushing it hardest. It puts the legal framework in place for the new QFS system, the rails for transfers, the transparency mechanisms, the tokenized asset structure. The claim is that without it, the whole reset sits on shaky legal ground, and with it, the blockchain financial system becomes permanent federal law. One voice went further, saying the act is needed specifically because the RV will reveal the ownership of all physical dinar notes and their tokenized equivalents, and that doing so would cut off a massive funding source for entrenched interests who have been using the currency for off-book financing. That's a pretty elaborate claim. It ties the Clarity Act, the dinar revaluation, asset tokenization, and geopolitical power struggles into one package. I can't verify any of that chain, but I'm telling you what's being said because it's the dominant thread today, and it's driving the urgency around this week's Senate calendar. One other voice pushed back on that whole narrative pretty hard, saying flatly that the U.S. Digital Asset Market Clarity Act has no connection to Iraq's currency revaluation, that Iraq is a sovereign nation managing its own monetary policy under guidance from the World Bank, the IMF, and the U.S. Treasury, and that tying the dinar to American cryptocurrency legislation is a category error. I think that's worth hearing, because it's easy to get swept up in a story where everything connects to everything else, and sometimes the simplest read is the right one. The Clarity Act is about American digital asset regulation, and the dinar is about Iraqi monetary reform, and those are two separate things that might be happening in the same general timeframe without being causally linked. But the other side of that is that we've seen legislation and currency moves coordinated before, so I'm not dismissing it out of hand. We're just watching, and we'll see what actually happens in the Senate this week. Let me get to the dinar specifically because there's still a lot of noise around rates and timing. The chatter that the revaluation can happen anytime and is already done keeps making the rounds. One voice said it could happen today. Another said it could happen tomorrow. A third said definitely by the end of the year, specifically pegging it to September 30th, the date U.S. coalition security forces are supposedly scheduled to complete their withdrawal from Iraq, and the date Iraq is supposed to finish disarming internal factions. The logic there is that monetary sovereignty and security sovereignty are linked, and once Iraq is fully in control of its own territory without foreign troops, that's when the Central Bank of Iraq can move freely on the rate. That's at least a grounded theory. It ties the rate change to specific, verifiable political and security milestones rather than just soon. September 30th is 57 days out. We'll watch it. On the rate itself, one claim floating around cited a Forex letter supposedly dated May 27, 2025, putting the dinar at 4.8101. Another voice said if the dinar comes out around 481 cents and you apply a 3 times multiplier through some mechanism they didn't fully explain, you'd end up significantly higher than other predictions. I have no way to verify that letter, I have no idea what the multiplier mechanism is supposed to be, and 481 cents is more than 3 times what the dinar traded at before the Gulf War, so massive grain of salt. What I can tell you is that the official rate right now is still 1,310 dinars to the dollar. There's been no announcement from the well-followed voice, and the rate screens haven't moved. The excitement is palpable, but we're still waiting on the thing that matters, which is an actual official change. One well-followed voice continues to emphasize the monetary reform education that's happening inside Iraq, saying the process of lifting the 3 zeros is being explained in great detail almost every day to Iraqi citizens. That tracks with what we've seen in Iraqi media, where deleting the zeros is being discussed as a redenomination. A 25,000 dinar note becomes a 25 dinar note, purchasing power stays roughly the same inside Iraq, but the currency is easier to handle and looks more normal compared to other countries. That's not the windfall speculators are hoping for, so it's worth naming the gap between what Iraq is publicly discussing and what the intel community is expecting. Could both happen, a redenomination inside Iraq and a revaluation on Forex? Maybe. But if you're betting your plans on the latter, make sure you understand that Iraq's own government keeps describing the former. There was also some discussion about Iraq's oil revenue shortfall. The government needs about 10.8 trillion dinars per month to cover salaries and public expenditures. But oil revenues aren't covering it, especially with production losses tied to the Strait of Hormuz closure earlier this year. One report said the shortfall compared to normal output was around 300 million barrels in the first half of 2026. The government's been relying on domestic borrowing to make up the gap, and one economic voice said that could continue through the end of the year if current conditions hold. That's a real fiscal pressure point. It could push Iraq toward a currency move to increase effective revenue, or it could force them into austerity and delay any big changes. Hard to say which. One other claim I want to highlight because it was pretty specific, that Iraqi private banks are under increasing pressure to meet U.S. Federal Reserve requirements and get sanctions lifted, and that compliance deadlines from the Central Bank of Iraq and the U.S. Treasury are being finalized. That lines up with the trade bank detail from yesterday. If banks are working overtime on compliance, it suggests something with a hard deadline is coming. It doesn't tell us what, but it does mean the infrastructure side is moving. And a voice made the point yesterday that if compliance deadlines are tightening, that's usually a signal something significant is in the near future, because you don't rush banks through expensive system upgrades unless you're about to use them. Let me touch the dong briefly, not a lot new today. One thread mentioned that holders of dinar and dong are supposedly seeing dramatically higher values overnight in their QFS wallets, reflecting those nations' true asset wealth. I don't have any verified first-hand reports of that, I don't have access to a QFS wallet to check myself, and the official rate for the dong is still around 25,000 to the dollar. So claim noted, but I'm not seeing the evidence yet. And the ZIM still tied entirely to the redemption center story. The claim remains that ZIM can only be redeemed at a redemption center, not at a regular bank, and that these centers will offer higher rates. Now that I've corrected what redemption center actually means, a participating bank, not a special building, the claim becomes, certain banks will handle ZIM and others won't, and the ones that do will supposedly offer better rates than Forex. That's at least a claim you can test once exchanges actually begin, assuming they do. As of now, no ZIM exchanges that I'm aware of, no verified appointments, no 800 numbers. All right, the bigger picture. We are now 2 days out from Thursday, August 6th, the date that's been circulating since the weekend as the day redemption centers participating banks go live for private appointments. If that's real, we should start seeing something verifiable soon. Emails from Wells Fargo or other institutions, confirmed appointments, first-hand reports from people who got a call. I've been watching the community feeds closely and I'm not seeing that yet. What I am seeing is the same pattern we've seen before. A date gets set, excitement builds, the date arrives, and it turns out the intel evolved or the timeline shifted or it was always meant to be a window instead of a hard day. I'm not saying Thursday can't be real, I'm saying we've been here before, and the smartest thing you can do is stay informed, stay hopeful, and don't let any single date carry all your emotional weight. Let me talk about why this app exists, because it's exactly this situation, this much scattered information, this many competing timelines, this much emotional energy riding on claims nobody can fully verify. The person who built GCR Sentinel has been in these currencies for over 15 years. He's watched this exact cycle dozens of times. The chatter builds, the date gets closer, everyone refreshes the same screens, and then you're either right or you're waiting again. And what he realized is that the problem isn't the wait is what it is. The problem is the chaos. You're checking 10 different feeds, you're trying to remember who said what and when, you're missing claims because they dropped at 2 a.m. and you were asleep, and by the time you catch up the story's already moved. So he built something that pulls all of it into one place, gives you custom notifications so you never miss the voices or claims you actually care about, and organizes it so you can see the whole picture instead of just the loudest voice in the moment. That's the app. And the VIP tier, the one that gets you the watch lists, the RV Day alert system, the stuff power users actually rely on, is free right now. Not discounted free. That won't last, and I don't know how much longer the founder's keeping it open, but if you've been on the fence, this is the window. Search GCR Sentinel on the App Store or Google Play or head to gcrsentinel.com. It's a free download, most of it's free to use, and VIP is free while we're still in launch. Grab it. All right, what do we watch for today and tomorrow? The Clarity Act in the Senate, does it pass Tuesday? Does it pass Wednesday? Does it pass at all? Thursday, August 6th, the Redemption Center target is now 48 hours out, so if it's real, we should start seeing verifiable buildup. And the Central Bank of Iraq, because no matter what the chatter says, the rate doesn't change until the CBI says it does in an official public statement, and we have not seen that yet. Everything else is anticipation. Important, worth tracking, but not the thing itself. I'll see you tomorrow morning, Wednesday, August 5th, same time, same place. And if you know someone who's still running from feed to feed trying to keep up, send them here. This is exactly what we built for. Stay grounded, stay hopeful, and I'll see you tomorrow.